All right, we are recording. Welcome everybody. I'm gonna hand you over to Christina and let her introduce herself.
Hi everybody. I am seeing some of your faces. Some I can't see, but I just want to look real quick before I start talking and see who I see. Thank you all for joining. I see your happy faces. It's good to see you all today. So before I start, I'm going to offer you a quick blessing in my language. Something I've been learning only recently. I'm Jemez Pueblo, Taos Pueblo, Chicana, Cali native. The specific tribal affiliation I have in California is Achamen, also known as Juaneño. And I've lived back and forth between California and New Mexico my whole life. My matriarchal line is from Taos Pueblo. Give me a thumbs up if anybody's ever been to Taos Pueblo. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, so you are going to get to hear more about my story, but you know, my tribe during COVID up at Taos Pueblo, they began hosting language classes, which they had them for the community only. And I live in Santa Fe, you know, which is about an hour and a half south of Taos Pueblo. And so I had never been able to attend these language classes. And one of the amazing things that has happened since COVID is the education department has started facilitating language classes for community members. So, wow, I mean, that was a huge technological jump for my Pueblo. And so, you know, we can look at all the barriers that have arisen out of this new normal, or we can look at the bright side. And I'm going to take you to the bright side today too. So I am a new language learner. I'm a language warrior in my Tiwa language. And one of the first things we learned in class was a very basic blessing. And I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she has the ear for language, and it's a beautiful thing to hear her praying in our Pueblo way. We pray with cornmeal. Corn is in essence just, you know, basically the root of our culture is the corn, and so we pray physically with cornmeal, and we breathe our sacred breath on our cornmeal when we pray, which we do in the morning. We're supposed to pray in the morning, so I'm not going to belabor you with all of that, but I will share with you the prayer. And give me a sec here. Womea yantuya kutu kutui amelahu gunhi anapi yahi. Aitu nehenu, manakuiwa wiwa, maikama yantuya ta'a. Okay, so the title of my presentation today is called, I'm going to screen share, and then I might check back in with you just to make a visual connection with you over the course of this workshop, because I have moments where I need to pause and breathe and take a drink and just connect. So I'm going to go back and forth from screen share too. And also, you know, as Indigenous people, we're not super linear, nor should we strive to be. So I may go off on a tangent, and you just have to bear with me, and hopefully it's all for the good. So I'm going to go ahead and put on my screen share option here. And thank you all for being here today. It was really nice to hear Elder Kathy from Tewa Women United share some words with us. I too have been involved with Tewa Women United. I worked there for a while with their Agin Healthy Sexuality and Body Sovereignty program. So they're amazing, and one of the preeminent Indigenous women-led organizations in not only New Mexico, but the nation. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my screen right. So I saw these two, my talk revolves around surviving and thriving in a culture of violence, building a movement rooted in love and resilience. So I found these really cool graphics this week that, you know, we can't talk about anything until we reflect and start from the starting point of colonialism, because that's pretty much defines all of our existence. And I found this infographic that I thought was interesting just to look at the levels and the hierarchies, which is obviously very colonial hierarchies of colonization and white supremacy, capitalism, and how these things are functioning in various facets that are all encapsulated by colonialism. So I thought this was just good. I like infographics. It's interesting to talk about things, but as a visual person too, I just like to always have infographics. So thinking about the effects of colonialism on the world, like colonialism doesn't just impact us here in the United States. This is global. And then you look at the wheels of violence. Let me make this a little bigger. And this is another infographic. I saw this one this past week, and I was like, oh, this is the graphic I've been looking for like my whole life, that kind of encapsulates the energetic buoyancy of not only capitalism, but the culture of violence embedded in capitalism. So when I worked at Table Women United, that's where I learned from Elder Kathy about the culture of violence and how pervasive it is. And then you really start to reflect on, as Indigenous people, how much it impacts everything about our way of being. So we're all a product of the culture of violence. We're all a product of colonialism. And however, I don't want to get mired in this because that's not what my talk is about, but I really found these two infographics very important, and I wanted to share them with you. Another thing I wanted to talk about too, because this is an extension of both of those things, colonialism, violence. Now, in our Pueblo culture, this past week, we had, this whole season that we're in is a ceremonial season. And when I talked about the corn in the beginning, this is our planting season. Pueblo people, as you know, are agrarians, much like Navajo people. We are agrarian cultures. And due to the effects of COVID, we did not have our feast day in Jemez Pueblo, which would have been this past Sunday, August 4th. So as Pueblo people and living with a traditional calendar where we should be actively engaging in our ceremonies right now, it's very, very mentally and psychologically hard. And I want to talk to you all about the new wave of colonialism, and that is the spiritual and psychological attack on our minds that is currently taking place in our country. So that I don't know if you all have made that connection, but it is very real. And we can all argue about how and why COVID got here, and that's up for debate. But the fact is, we are still under attack, and it's very hard. So people like to talk about colonialism as we know, you all are young activists. We know that it's a verb, it's an action, it's an energy, it's buoyant. So yeah, let's move forward. This is, I just wanna also shout out my grandfather who passed away several months ago, right at the beginning of COVID, who wasn't able to have proper ceremonial doings or closure because of COVID. So we did the best we could with the circumstances that we had. But here, these are the continued attacks that our people have to deal with. And thankfully we have the resiliency to endure the current state of our condition here. But these things, this is a form to me of, it's an interesting form of psychological, spiritual warfare against our people, COVID. Many of you are in college, young people. I was in college many moons ago. I'm an older activist now. I'm like the auntie. I'm kind of not quite the elder. I'm kind of the auntie in the mix now. First got activated in college, and I'll tell you more about that. But I saw this, I thought this was an interesting like meme or just post somebody posted. And for those of you in school, I have a PhD. I spent so many years in school and I'm recovering now from academia. But it says, what if in academia we shifted our everyday discourse from I study, I look at, I'm interested in, I focus on, I critique. Oh, the PhD program. All we did in my doctoral program is argue and critique and break down and, you know, argue existing theories. And I'm like, instead, what if we shifted the narrative to who we are accountable to in our communities? Who do we listen to? Who do we pay attention to? Who are we doing this work for, right? And that is really, we talk about indigenizing education or decolonizing methodologies. But so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my story and where and whom I'm accountable to. So these are my parents. I'm an only child. My grandparents raised me. My grandmother's from Taos Pueblo and my grandfather's from Jemez Pueblo. And I'll tell you more about them because they're such an interesting part of my story to my activism and how I got here today. And hopefully I can offer you younger activists some insight or some guidance. These are who I show up for. My daughter, my family, my culture, women, children, my LGBTQ, trans and two-spirited siblings. I show up for justice and equity, and I stand up for those who have been silenced. What do I pay attention to? I listen and pay attention to my intuition. And I encourage you to do this too, do this activity. Maybe you can right now, if you have some notes, write who you're accountable to. Take a moment to jot some notes down here. And who do you show up for? Why are you an activist? Why are you on the front lines? Why are you in the movement? Who are you showing up for? Who are you listening and paying attention to? Who are those guides? Man, I have to say Elder Kathy is somebody I listen and pay attention to. I listen to my intuition. Women's intuition, ladies, has been discounted for far too long. I listen to my daughter. My daughter, she channels, like sometimes my daughter will say something to me in such a way that is like so next level and so connected to spirit that I have to just sit there and look at her in awe at this gentle spirit, enlightened being. My elders, unfortunately, because of COVID too, I can't spend time with my elders in my pueblos. And that's another form of attack against our people and our spirits. I listen and pay attention to my community's collective trauma, but I don't dwell in that trauma. Because if there's anything the psychological warfare attack on our people wants us to believe is that we're doomed. I listen and pay attention to my community's hopes and visions for the future. And I'm finding ways to pray and stay connected to the land in spite of the fact that I can't dance for our feast days and our doings, and I can't go to the kiva and practice and have that community with my people. And finally, we have to listen to our own needs and desires. And let me tell you about self-care is the real revolution, people. We have to learn to take care of ourselves. center ourselves, and not in a selfish way, not in a Western way, not in an rugged individualist white man way, but in a reclamation, in a real sovereign way. I'm gonna share some space with you for a minute. Are you with me? Can I get a thumbs up? Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. If you got anything to say. Yeah, the graphics, Nico, aren't they incredible? I was like, that one circular graphic was like everything I've been looking for in a visual. It's like all the shit in my head moving around that I didn't have a visual to connect, and now I have something to use. So I'm gonna drop real quick my email. If anybody wants me to directly send you those graphics, I can, or if you wanna just hit me up, we can have a chat. So yes, I get emotional. I have my medicine here. Burn your medicine, find your medicine. I use all kinds. Everything from your candles to your medicines, of course, culturally respective too, you know. You have to find your own medicine from your own culture to use. All right. I gave you all my email, so email me because I need to move on. So another thing that I want to let's talk about. Okay, so another thing, let me go back to screen sharing. Well, do I want to go back to screen sharing? I do. Let me breathe and see what Spirit's telling me. So let's just talk a little bit more about the culture of violence. I think we pretty much covered that. Let me show you one more graphic because again, I don't want to dwell there too long, but it's important. You might want to consider all the ways that which you personally have been impacted by the culture of violence. So let me tell you a little bit about me. Too, in course of this story, because it's so important to how I found my activism. So let's talk about Native federal policy too, it's part of my story. So I grew up in Los Angeles mostly. These two folks right here are my grandparents. My grandma's from Taos Pueblo, 8th grade education. By the time she was like 14 or 15, she was in Albuquerque working as a nanny. She got this interesting experience to go to Albuquerque and become a nanny for a wealthy white couple. It was there that she met my grandfather. He had already been a participant in federal Indian boarding school. He went to the Indian school. He tells stories of having to go from Jemez Pueblo, which you could drive to Santa Fe to Jemez in an hour. But back then, they had covered wagons, and he would have to ride a covered wagon for 3 days just to get to Santa Fe, only to spend months there and not come home. Only coming home on the summer, in the summer or the holidays. So these two people met at a very young age. And then this other federal program known as the Federal Indian Relocation Program in the 50s, which was an assimilation policy to send Native people as in a form of assimilation, as a form of stripping them from their culture, sending them to cities who had this was the industrial boom time, right? So you planes, trains, automobiles. So if anybody knows federal Indian history and policy, which you should kind of have a small overview if you're working in environmental justice, this was a time of great change in the United States. People were being pushed out of the traditional lifestyles, agrarian living, our Pueblo people, to a cash economy. This was a time when already many of our indigenous Native people had gone to fight in wars at continues to be disproportionate levels in contrast to the mainstream society. Because of course, as indigenous people, we are the natural warriors and defenders of the land, and we're still doing that. You had men coming back from war. You had young people who had already been displaced and put in boarding schools. And then this all culminated with the Federal Indian Relocation Program, which was really just a means of assimilating further our people into the colonial world and worldview. So my grandparents grew up, and this is, you know, when people talk about colonialism, this is not hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I was raised by these two people. They raised me. So that lived experience of my grandfather who passed this year and my grandmother who is now alone after being married to my grandfather for 65 years, that's some serious shit. And here we are, fast forward, we'll go to LA for a better life. My grandfather did have a great, they accomplished a good life, but their children suffered immeasurably as urban Indians in that change, in that drastic change. My mom was born at Jemez Pueblo in 1955 by a traditional midwife. We still had traditional midwives in our communities. And talk about another policy that came in, we're talking about Indian Health Services, which entered our indigenous communities in like 1955, and within 1 or 2 generations completely obliterated home birthing. And now we as indigenous women and matriarchs are actively trying to reclaim these traditions. And it is possible, and that's another form of activism that you young people can get into, is reclaiming your birthing traditions as women. And getting back and reclaiming what has been lost so drastically in just 2 generations. So then you have my mother being raised in Los Angeles, and that was a time of AIM. Those things were starting to pop off, and AIM and all those social movements of that time are also a result of federal Indian relocation and the urban Indian diaspora. So yeah, that there was that you know, activism happening in the cities. However, my mom, you know, was a little while young. I don't have to say wild, just young, just living and just wanting to live. But guess what happened? I came along when she was in high school. She was a cheerleader, doing her damn thing. But I guess, you know, there was other plans in the mix. So in spite of this great effort for sustenance and for a new life, new opportunities, then you get to my generation. I ain't gonna tell you exactly how old I am, but I came up in the era of the gangsta rap, you know, that was my era. That was when it was all just happening. These are my teenage years here in the hood. That was my boyfriend right there when I was like 19. No, that was like 17, because I left by the time I was 19. Lots of lateral violence in my hood. I mean, so much. Like, I don't want to pathologize myself, because that's another form of mental and spiritual attack, is the ongoing pathologizing of our people and us accepting that pathologizing. I have adverse experiences from my youth, but do I go around saying I have PTSD? No, I do not. He's gone. All those guys are dead. And at that point in my youth, I realized if I didn't get out of this hood, that I was going to end up in not so good of a way for myself. I was towing a real fine line there. And yeah, I do think karma's a bitch, because in some fashion, I think that I am still paying back karmic debt for some of the things that I was complicit in my youth. And maybe that's why I'm such a hardcore activist now. But I didn't know. And now I do. So around the time of many years of losing close friends and suffering as a teenager in a very violent gang infested, or whatever we want to call it, community, I made the decision that I needed to heal, that if I stayed in the city, if I stayed in the hood, it just wasn't going to bode well for me. So that's when I set a new course for my life. And I made the conscious decision to remove myself from that environment. And I decided to go to college because I had always been smart, had always been inquisitive. My dad kept saying, you know, why don't you go to college? Why don't you go somewhere? I was kind of piddling around after high school for a couple years. And upon losing several friends over the course of 2 years, I was broken. And so I used education as a means of leaving. And that's when my new life began. And that's when I began actively connecting with my culture. So those of you urban natives, if you ever feel any fear about connecting with your people and your culture, or you're mixed, I'm mixed. And I've spent pretty much many years of my life on this journey back to myself. That's me when I first moved to my Pueblo of Jemez. We have a family home there. And that's when I really started to think about how different my upbringing was. It was like Tupac syndrome, me against the world. I still, that Tupac creeps into my head, let me tell you, with that me against the world. But that's when I started to see, living in my tribal community, that, that there was a different way of seeing the world. And for those of you who grew up in a Pueblo and have had the benefit of growing up in your tribal community, you already understand those things. And that's imbued in who you are. Or for somebody like myself, although my grandparents raised me and we did travel back and forth for feast days and holidays, it's different. We all know that. It's different. It's a different lived experience. And it was living on my Pueblo that taught me the value of relationships and interdependence and how everybody depends on each other to get things done, whether it's a feast day or a birthday or a celebration of a graduation or the death of a loved one. There's so many ways that the community supports each other and holds each other. And of course, nothing's perfect. It's not perfect anywhere. But wow, what a revelation to a city girl. And that's when I started to realize not only that coming back home to my culture was the path to my healing, but that we have a social responsibility as Indigenous people, as Pueblo people. And I had a lot of years of just not giving a F and thinking my actions had no accountability or ramifications. And I learned that that's not true. And what allowed me to get back and pave a way into my tribal community was education. I was like, wow, there's a reason now I got an education. Not just to get away, not just to reclaim a new identity, not mired in violence, but I can use my education to give back. And that's essentially what I've been doing ever since. And so that's where I got my heart in social justice work. It's been a beautiful journey. And there's so much work. When I moved to my Pueblo, I realized there's so much work to be done. All that got even solidified even more when I went to Standing Rock in 2016. And again, back to relationality. What do all of these images have in common? Look at, this is me with Reyes Devor, who once Reyes Devor returned from Standing Rock, she started the Pueblo Action Alliance. Once I got back, I started the Three Sisters Collective. That's us on Turtle Island on the bottom left on Thanksgiving. The top left is the Locke family of Standing Rock, South Dakota, whose family probably was one of the main families instrumental in the Standing Rock movement. which is how I got there. I got invited by that family to come. Bottom right is Pueblo Camp, the formation of the Pueblo Camp, which did a lot of like security type work around Standing Rock. So I would like to build a case for relationality in your activism work. And I would like to encourage you all to look at this. I'm gonna stop share for a second and connect with you all. I've been reading this book here. It's called All About Love by Bell Hooks. Does anybody have this book? If you can give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up. Yes, get that book if you have it right now. I'm a preach from the good word of Bell Hooks. Let me see some comments. Give me some love, y'all. Send me some love. Okay, so building a love ethic is what I want to get to. So let's look at chapter 8, if you got it, and if not, get it. 129, 128. Community cannot take root in a divided life. Long before community assumes external shape and form, it must be present as a seed in the undivided self. Only as we are in communion with ourselves can we find community with others. Parker Palmer is where the quote comes from. So one thing that our society is trying, the culture of violence is trying to do right now is break down our communities, right? Thumbs up. In the chat box, or somebody wanna shout out some of the ways that the culture of violence is actively trying to break down our communities. I've been listening to Black liberationist theology and looking at the ways that the culture of violence is trying to break down the Black community, ways they're trying to break down Indigenous communities. And the way they have done it as far as with Indigenous people and policy is through the breakdown of the social tapestry of our communities, whether it's all these policies I mentioned, separation of families going on at the border right now. And, you know, missing children, where are all those missing children going? Sit with that for a minute. Capitalism rewards and enforces individualism and basically punishes communal relationships. Let's talk about that for a minute. In M. Scott Peck, in his book, The Different Drum, Community Making and Peace, in and through community lies the salvation of the world. We are all born, okay, that was the quote from Scott Peck. Moving on to Bell Hooks. 129, we are all born into the world of community. Rarely, if ever, does a child come into the world in isolation. Children are born into a world surrounded by the possibility of communities, family, doctors, nurses, midwives, even admiring strangers comprise this field of connections, some more intimate than others. We are not born alone. We are not meant to be alone. We are not born depressed. We are not born pathologized. Can I get a witness? Can I get a clap, clap, and a thumbs up? The culture of violence seeks to pathologize us, and then we accept the pathologizing by saying, I have PTSD, I'm depressed, I'm bipolar, I'm a this, that, and this. You are born whole and beautiful. And let's talk about Western family values. Much of the talk about family values in our society highlights the nuclear family, one that is made up of mother, father, 1 to 2.5 children. In the United States, this unit is presented as the primary and preferable organization for the parenting of children, one that will ensure everyone's optimal well-being. Of course, this is a fantasy. Hardly anyone in our society lives like this. Even individuals who are raised in nuclear families usually experience it as merely a small unit. But however, capitalism and patriarchy pushes the heteronormative nuclear family agenda, obviously, for a reason. What is that reason, people? Why do you think? Drop it in the chat box. Why is that prioritized? Yep. Replacing the family, somebody writes, split us up, break our communities. Capitalism and patriarchy working together as structures of domination have worked overtime to undermine and destroy our network of extended family relationships. Replacing this by a more small, privatized, autocratic unit helped increase alienation and made abuses of power even more possible. It gave absolute rule to father, patriarchy, secondary rule over children to the mother. And by the encouragement of this segregation of the nuclear family from the extended family, women were forced to become more dependent on men, children dependent on an individual woman, and then the demonization of the single mother that falls on top of that. Can I get a woman up in here? Yes, demonize the single mother. Why don't you? It is this dependency that became and is the breeding ground for abuses of power. And the failure of this pseudo-faux family unit is very well documented. Exposed as dysfunctional more often than not, as a place of emotional chaos, neglect, and abuse, only those in denial continue to exist that this is the best environment for raising children. Obviously, the Western paradigm does not take into account our LGBTQ relations and all those type of family. Right now, I'm raising my daughter with my father, myself, and my daughter. That's our family unit. It's multi-generational. And we're in the process of planning homeschool curriculum right now. So that's another interesting thing we need to be thinking about as decolonial thinkers, revisionist, historians, futuristic minded, indigenous futurisms, whatever you are, name it, is looking at why Western education was created, again, to separate the family, to send your kids away for 8 hours a day so that you can go to work and feed the machine. But guess what? The machine is breaking before our eyes. And they're telling us to send our kids back to school. They're trying to tell me to send my kid to school so she could sit at a desk with a plastic barrier around her, not touch anybody else, get her lunch delivered to her desk, and the teacher, I guess, is going to be in a bubble suit. Not sure how they're trying to do that. But when we talk about decolonizing, we really need to get real with it. I didn't get a PhD. What I'm realizing now is I didn't get a PhD to let somebody else raise my children. So I'm trying to figure out now how I'm going to make it all work. Having my own business, consultation business, removing myself from the matrix, and now taking on the responsibility of actually taking all the decolonial theory I talked about in academia and making it a reality in how I raise my child. Are we having these critical conversations? Can I get a thumbs up? Are we having these critical conversations in our tribal communities? about what it really means to be sovereign and take our educational processes back, because these are the conversations we need to be having. People talk about, oh, when we go back to ... or when COVID ends and everything goes back to this idea that we had about reality or what it is or was, or when school starts again and I'm back on campus ... Like, is that what's really going to happen, y'all? I'm not convinced there is a going back. What do you all think? Does anybody want to unmute themselves and tell me what you think? Or drop some thoughts in the chat? No?
I think I'll speak up. I think
Introduce yourself too, so we know who you are and where you're from.
I'm Nico from SoCal. I think with how big this crisis is, it's kind of a waking up moment for all of us, really, and especially for younger people who have grown up only seeing the failures of this society and with this model. And so I think in a very big way, even if it's not immediate, we're not really going back to the way things were, at least not for long, because we all know better.
Somebody writes, there is no going back to normal. We have to want more for ourselves. Unfortunately, many people are comfortable with the current systems that we have in place, even though the systems are so harmful and oppressive. Yes, they are. So I guess my rhetorical question is, what's possible? And I'm going to go ahead and go back to my screen sharing and move on. I would like to talk about building a love ethic is how I want to end, but I want to get, has anybody heard of my collective, Three Sisters Collective in Santa Fe, New Mexico? Give me a thumbs up if you have. If not, you can follow us on social media or threesisterscollective.org to learn more about what we do, although I'm going to show you right now more about what we do. So when I got back from Standing Rock, my traditional, one of my mothers at Taos said, hey, that's great. It's great. The activism is great. But what are you going to do here? What are you going to do here back in our, there's a lot of stuff going on here in our neck of the woods. And so then that's kind of how Three Sisters started. We are very grassroots. And unfortunately, I think that's going to have to change pretty soon just because of the nature of our work and how it's evolved. And the fact that in this now new time of reparations and allyship, we have a lot of people wanting to help fund our endeavors. So Three Sisters Collective is kind of not only an extension of the Standing Rock movement, but also for me, having been, I was in a doctoral program, Arizona State University School of Social Transformation and Justice Studies. My degree is in Justice Studies. And I was in school from 2015 to 2018. And that was right in the thick of Standing Rock. And so even though I was a full-time student and a mother to a very young child, I still managed to get my butt to Standing Rock twice. And I wouldn't have gone had I not actually been invited by the Flying Earth family that was in the picture. They personally invited me, knowing my background in activism and just my social justice leanings. So when I got back so what I was saying about my PhD program is one thing I realized is the further I got in my Western educational endeavors and accomplishments, the further I felt connected further displaced I felt from my culture and my people and my community and my land base and all the things. Because even if, you know, there's just so, the PhD program is so mentally, talk about mental warfare. It is so mentally taxing. You know, it was a contributing factor also in my divorce, which I'm newly divorced. It's not a sad thing, it's fine. And so it was a kind of a shit show. But one way that I felt I could connect was through engagement, community engagement. So I founded this organization with 2 other women who have Taos Pueblo roots. Autumn Gomez, Santa Fe born and raised. Autumn Gomez, she's an artist, a doula, a birth worker. She also works for Tewa Women United, Agin program, the Healthy Sexuality and Body Sovereignty Project. And Autumn Billy, she's also Taos Pueblo, and myself. And we live here in a very highly gentrifying city, which is another new form of colonialism. Let's call it what it is. People that are originally from Santa Fe, the old Hispanic families who grew up around the plaza area, they can't even afford to live there anymore because the property taxes, and it's impossible for most people to live in this city. We, as 3 indigenous women living in Ogapoge, Tewa word for Tewa land, we felt often ostracized in the city. And this is really one of the first places I've lived in that I've felt like overt racism and that tension from seemingly, you know, liberal, good intentioned people. Which I actually prefer the Trumper in a way, because at least you know where you stand with them. We seek to promote, we should refine our mission, but I like to say we seek to recenter and rematriate Ogapoge, recenter an indigenous presence through arts, activism, education, and community building. We center and empower indigenous women, children, elders, LGBTQ2S. That is my daughter. We're helping mentor the younger folks too. Everything we do is embedded with a spiritual foundation, because as indigenous folks, we are spiritual beings, and that's okay. Building a culture of peace as the antidote or anti-venom to the dominant culture of violence. So our work seeks to build a culture of peace and love ethic, because all of our work as social justice warriors has to be rooted in love and not in our anger, okay? Number 1, creating safe spaces for our people, educating around social justice and environmental issues, and in this city specifically, to create visibility and humanize indigenous people. Because in this city that is basically sustained by indigenous art and artistry, our Indian Market weekend, which is not happening right now because of COVID, is the largest revenue generating event in the city, Indian Market. So our culture is the foundation of the industry of Santa Fe, but yet you don't feel love on any other time besides Indian Market, let me tell you. We pretty much taken over the Women's March as of like 2 or 3 years ago, because the previous organizers could not figure out how to integrate and prioritize and elevate indigenous women. So we pretty much had to take it over. So here's one way we did that. This also came out on the cover of the Santa Fe New Mexican. We engage in policy work. That's with Deb Hallen at a meeting with her. Although there's 3 core founding members, we have a large network, and these are some of our extended members here in this photo as well. You may recognize them. We also engage heavily in the MMIW movement. And one thing we're really proud of is we created a musical compilation. And it's not just music, it's spoken word, music, and interviews with Indigenous women. It's all Indigenous women performers, speakers. And we use this CD as it's a teaching tool. So somebody could purchase the CD and listen to the tracks and have conversations, community conversations around the topic of MMIG trans 2S, excuse me, MMIG2, it's a lot of words in my mouth. So we had a CD release party for this. The creative director is Clara Natanaba, bottom right. You may recognize some of these esteemed matriarchs and women in this photo who are doing great things in their communities. And all the proceeds from this album go to Sovereign Bodies Institute in California, which is developing the comprehensive MMIW database with an Indigenous framework. We also coordinate, and I was instrumental in organizing the first annual ever Indigenous Women's Day at our state capitol during the legislative session. The first one was last year, and this was the second annual with the theme of MMIW. If you look behind you at this building, this is our state capitol in New Mexico. It's the Roundhouse is what they call it. The Roundhouse, a little tidbit, is the reason why that it is round is because it is inspired by the traditional Pueblo kiva. The old style ones were round and are round, like at Taos Pueblo, our traditional religious meeting houses are kivas, and they're round, and you go down into them through a ladder. So whoever back in the day knew these people in power know how powerful we are as Indigenous people. Why would they model the Roundhouse after a Pueblo kiva? Ooh, that's pretty heavy. Now, over time in that Roundhouse, it's all been male. It's a big good old boy show when I go into the legislative session over there. And the women who work in the lobbying and the women who work in that building, they're all kind of play the respectability politics role really well with their 2.5-inch, high heels and makeup. And they're still kind of doing this, little respectability politics bullshit. And my thought was, how would we rebalance the energy? As an Indigenous matriarch, how would I rebalance the energy of the Roundhouse? Obviously, there is some connection to our kiva and our traditional power they're trying to harness in this space. But how do we really bring it back? And so my thought was, what is like the opposite of the male and the patriarchy and the white male? And to me, that would be an Indigenous woman. So my goal that day, earlier this year, was to bring as many Indigenous women and girls into that space. And these young girls held it down. They danced, they did poetry, they gave speeches, and they talked about the value of our girls and women. And it was a beautiful day. It was a truly beautiful day. We prepare girls, and we want to strengthen our mentorship programming to mentor young girls to take these leadership roles. My daughter has been in the movement with me and been an activist since she was in utero. And there she is already at age 6, holding space. Our most recent events, and have really put us on the map, is the removing and the removal of some of the racist monuments in our northern New Mexico. Three Sisters was directly involved in dialogue with our city leadership, our mayor, and we were successful in already getting two Oñate statues got removed, one up in north, a little bit north of Española, and then the one right down the road, Santa Fe, off the plaza by the church, the big church. They removed the Oñate statue pretty much right away. We're waiting for the obelisk to get removed in the center of the Santa Fe Plaza. We were promised by the mayor that was going to come down. There is federal jurisdiction around these obelisks. They're considered like federal property with federal laws of protection. So we have been patient with the assurance of the city and the mayor that will be coming down shortly. This picture below, I love it. And this is a young man that I know. His name is Sunbird. He's from Okeowinge. Some of you may know him. We were there up in Alcalde when they took that Oñate statue down. And all Sunbird wanted to do was go dance up on that pillar where the statue was. And he kept getting pushed away by the police and by these men who were trying to guard it. They were all hurt feelings. And by the end of the day, when the action happened with the Red Nation and us, and a lot of people came up, we broke through the barrier. They were trying to keep us away from it. And Sunbird got to dance in his Pueblo lands. Over the Oñate monument. And those are all handprints too. This is an event we had too, June 18th. Once we got word, we had initially organized this action around getting the monument removed. And I think it was already publicized, but then through our negotiation with the mayor, we got word that the monument, the obelisks, there's 2 obelisks that are going to come down, and then the one Oñate statue. So then it kind of turned into a celebration, and that was a monumentous event. Okay, so I'm going to come back with you now. Any thoughts about any of it? Anything? Looking in the chat box. Were any of you up at any of the actions that went on around the monuments? Were any of you involved in Albuquerque or any of that? Yeah. So unfortunately, as a result of that day, our big action at the Santa Fe Plaza, June 18th, the Patriots or whatever those folks, the guys with the guns, they were there. There was also a hate crime that happened after that at the India restaurant here in town. It's all kind of convoluted, but somehow that kind of happened right after our event. And there was also a man spotted in the parking lot of that said Indian restaurant the night of our event. And I guess this man was carrying guns and ammo, and he was trying to park in this India restaurant parking lot, and then got into a verbal altercation with the owner of said restaurant. And that's when the owner observed that he had guns and ammo and was walking towards the plaza during our event. And then lo and behold, like 2 days later, said India Palace restaurant gets broken into and vandalized all crazy sick. So, which caused us as the organizers and the key folks in all of this to have to go underground. So I spent like the last 2 months or month and a half, I'm starting to emerge from the underground. And we had to take all our names and bios off our website. So anyway, you non-native allies can help us, because we are targets, especially if you're deep in the social justice work. And we need allyship to, did anybody come to our event? Because we did a really good job of working with local ally and medic groups. And I think we have a lot of engagement and dialogue to do on how to build these and solidify these relationships and allyships with non-native allies. They did a really good job of holding it down at our event. So I just want to thank those allies. Santa Fe walked the talk. Red Nation provided security for us. And yeah, it's pretty real right now. So in the remaining time, I want to talk to you a little bit about building a love ethic in the work. I want to talk about love, not in a cheesy way, but in a real way, because that's what's going to sustain our movements. Can I get a thumbs up or a hand clap? Woo, la, 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 la. It's a little speaking in tongues. Yeah, let's do it. Get into it. Call on your higher sources, whatever they may be. It's not about anybody to judge your spiritual path or where you find that way, but we need to be developing a spiritual practice if you don't have one. And one that's respectful, obviously, and not appropriative. So look to your culture, look to your teachers, look to your grandmothers, pray to your grandmothers, and say, grandmas, aunties, matriarchs, uncles, grandpas, tell me how to engage in this work in the best way. So let's talk about love, because I really want to get back to this notion of rooting our work in love. And my goal in the last part of the agenda here is to facilitate the creation of a word cloud with the subject of love and building our love ethic. And you all are going to contribute to that. And then one of the wonderful Uplift facilitators is going to take all your comments in the chat and put them into a word cloud and send it with you, send it to the participants, and then you can print it out and put it in your office or your room or your workspace or your heart space, okay? Is that cool? And we're gonna do it together. And then so we have all our thoughts and hearts together. So let's listen to this. So this book, I'm gonna encourage you to put it on your book shopping list if you don't have it, All About Love by Bell Hooks. That's what I've been referencing. As a society, we are embarrassed about love. We treat it as if it were an obscenity. We reluctantly admit to it. Even saying the word makes us stumble and blush. Love is the most important thing in our lives, a passion for which we would fight or die. And yet we're reluctant to linger over its names. Without a supple vocabulary, we can't even talk or think about it directly. Our confusion about what we mean when we use the word love is the source of our difficulty in loving. If our society had a commonly held understanding of the meaning of love, the act of loving wouldn't be so mystifying. There's dictionary definitions, but they usually kind of focus on sexual or romantic love. However, deep affection doesn't really adequately describe love's meaning. These days we use love in such a sloppy way that the meaning gets lost. Oh, I love coffee. I love freaking stuff, whatever you love. Oh, I love that shirt. Oh my God, those shoes, I love them. You know, all the things. We've reduced it to absolutely like the opposite of its meaning in a way. Imagine how much easier it would be for us to learn how to love if we began with a shared definition. The word love is almost often defined as a noun, yet all the astute theorists of love acknowledge that we would all love better if we used it as a verb. Let me see if there's anything else I want to share from this book. It's so good. It's like one of these books I have to read like 2 or 3 times just because to get through my thick skull. Because I'm still learning how to love, you know? At my ripe old age, I'm still learning to get my heart back because they wanted to steal my heart. And I'm not going to let them. So, in the movement, and where does love start? It starts with ourselves, right? So how are you prioritizing self-care? I want you to jot some ways down that you're going to practice self-care in your activism. And this is also an extension of love. So I'm going to call in Mariela. Mariela, are you with us?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, so let's get it. Are you ready?
Yes, I
Are you
am.
ready?
Yep.
Okay, so let's get this word cloud moving. I don't know if she can, can you screen share it and then we can see it as it's building?
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that.
Okay, so do I undo my cell or are we good? Do I have to do anything on my end? Yay!
Can you see it?
Yes.
Amazing.
Okay. So I've been doing a lot of the work, y'all. This is time to do the shadow work. Who's doing shadow work right now? How are we checking ourselves? Give me a thumbs up if you're facing your shadows right now in the new COVID era, because that's what we're being called to do. That's what Spirit's saying. You got to deal with your own shit. You can't go save the world if you're still, in a toxic relationship. That's me with my ex in the toxic as fuck relationship, trying to change the world. And that was his issue with me, is like, but see, I had a partner that didn't understand my passion for social justice. So that was on me, right? So in the chat box, I want you to start telling me some of the ways that you're going to show yourself love and prioritizing your self-care. Start dropping it in the chat box. So the love is going to start with you at the center, people.
And you all can just drop it in the chat box, and maybe Dr. Christina, you could just say them out loud so that way I don't have to check the chat box and I can just
Absolutely, I love
typing.
it.
That works.
Okay.
Great. Just give me some words then.
So I don't know if you can center one word, but love, I think we all know what the topic is. So how are we prioritizing let's do the first phase of love of self. And if you are one of those people that don't prioritize yourself and your self-care, then this is where you need to start. Okay, I'm gonna start with me, exercise. Respecting fear. Spending time with water. Oh, the water has been so good lately. Reclaiming my time. Food. What kind of food? What you eating, Beverly? Community, be specific. Oh God, they're moving so fast. Plant medicine. God, I missed a couple because it moves up and I can't see what passed. Let me see if I can see. Oh, good. Self-compassion. Centering joy. Balancing time. Communicating honestly. Love, just a heart. Oh, saying no. Oh, yes. Can I get say no? Ladies, say no. And accountability in community. Regulating my emotions. Foraging. Woo! Get your plan on. Time to start doing our gardens. It's time to start growing our own foods. Feeding the people revolution. Okay, so now let's extend outward. Oh, wait, there's more. Garlic. Community. I love garlic. Community. Solidarity. Honesty with myself. Ooh. That's a hard one right there, the honesty with ourselves. Unlearning the values of productivity, the grind culture, right? Naps, radical napping, radical rest. Naps for no damn reason. How about that? Meditation, yoga, trusting instincts and intuition. Trusting instincts, is that, oh yeah, I said that. Expressing love to others, and most importantly, myself. Yes, we're here for the garlic, thank you. Respecting my boundaries, respecting others' boundaries. Being outside, nature, among trees, tea, herbal teas, get off that Coke, getting off that high fructose corn syrup, holding space for communion, setting boundaries, we got that already. Dreaming, oh, dream space is powerful right now. Is anybody feeling the power of dream space right now? So we are in a time of great change, y'all. And we got to start building the vision for the future that we want to create. Eating ancestral foods. Oh my gosh, look at our word cloud. It's so beautiful. Hugging, friendship love, friendship touch, platonic loving, right? We need to start breaking down all these binaries of relationality, because the system wants they want to regulate how, where, and why we love. Platonic, I love that. Platonic touch, platonic love. Cuddling. Learning my mother tongue. Oh, yes. Learning your language. The garlic gang. I love it. Healing. Okay. We need to heal, people. We need to prioritize healing. We can't pass on those generational traumas to our next, we can't pass those on. The work is here, the work is now, the work is us. Can we see the graphic, how it looks? Oh.
Well, it doesn't look much like a heart, but it does look really cute.
That's more like a diamond, huh?
I know, I tried changing it around and it just got stuck in diamond, I guess.
Okay, well, you can always play with it. What do you all think? I'm looking for garlic. Mama, where's the garlic?
I'm looking for the garlic too.
Oh, I see it. It's up right here. See garlic?
Oh yeah, it's tiny.
Yay! Does anybody want to add anything else? As we build our communities, we build ourselves and we build each other. And the most radical thing we can do right now is offer each other love, care, kindness, consideration, a meal, a letter. So how, okay, now let's can we add more?
Yes, you can totally add more.
So yeah, how are we going to engage in radical community care? What are some actual actions that you will commit to engaging with? Is there any actual actions? Maybe you can, maybe make an effort. Like me, I need to make a little bit more effort to connect with my elders. Make more time, be more patient with my dad, who is helping me raise my daughter. Listening and learning. Talking to my family about white supremacy. Listening to children. Connecting with younger family members. Build loving, trusting relationships. Make art. Extending grace and compassion. Extending grace and compassion. Care packages. That's dope. Sharing food, reaching out to elders. If we already got these, that's fine. But you could, I think if you put it in again, it makes it bigger. I don't know. Reaching out to elders, extending love to difficult family members. Yes, woo. Might want to reach out to somebody you've been meaning to make amends with. Writing letters instead of emailing. How about taking time off from social media? Mutual aid. Yes, heckling our representatives. Yeah, definitely. What am I missing? Building accountability circles. Yes, that's really important, is creating pockets of friends and chosen family that you know you can be your raw self with, and that it's a safe space. Showing up safely in the streets. Political education. Ooh, I love this one, Vanessa. Expressing gratitude to those who have supported you. Yes. I think we got honesty and mentoring new comrades in the movement. Yes, I love it. Okay. Once she adds this, then let's see what our word cloud looks like.
Sorry, could you repeat the last two? Also, I use they, them pronouns. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Mentoring new comrades in the movement. All right. Then we can see the, let's see what our word cloud looks like. Thank you so much for participating, everybody. I hope I got everybody's words.
Now we have it layered.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
This is so interesting.
Well, maybe you could play with the different formats.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Is there a way, so will we be able to give each participant a copy of the word cloud?
I think we can download it. I was hoping y'all could just screenshot it. But let me try to,
We could do that too if it's in a good format. Anyways, we will as they're working on that right now, I just wanted to thank you for this time, sharing this time and space with me today. I like to have a framework for my my talks, but I also like the ability to have a little bit of freedom in harnessing or channeling whatever message needs to be conveyed in the moment, and trusting spirit in that way to guide me and to guide my voice. And so I thank you for this time, and I encourage you all to stay resolute and strong and build in your radical self-care into your movement practices and ideology. And I hope to see you in person at some point. Feel free to contact me through my organization, Three Sisters Collective, threesisterscollective.org. We're also on social media, and we do have an upcoming event coming up. We also work on preserving like iconic art in this city that's quickly being erased due to gentrification. So right now we have a campaign going on called the Keep Santa Fe Multicultural, which revolves around the preservation of a historic mural created in the 80s by renowned artist Gilberto Guzman. And so we're working on preserving that because the city wants to remove it to make room for a new contemporary art museum. Thank you so much. The work continues, and blessings to you all. Ta'a Debanopa.
thank you so much, Dr. Cristina Castro, and thank you everybody for attending. If you stay put, we will have our next workshop here in the space will be with Pueblo Action Alliance, or there are other workshops happening in the different breakout room. And thank you again for signing up for this incredible weekend with these amazing speakers that we've been in community with through all of our different work here in the Southwest, Greater Southwest Four Corners region.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you. So are you going to put up the graphic, or what was the plan with that?
If you want me to, I can go ahead and put up the graphic right now and y'all can screenshot it.
Yeah, let's
Or
do
I
that.
could also just go ahead and share it with y'all with the emails after everything. Let me just go ahead and share it. So everybody go ahead and screenshot this if you'd like to remember what y'all came up with. And I'm just gonna wait a few more seconds.
Can you make it bigger so the back text can come through?
I don't know if I can figure that out right now.
Okay. Well, so take this, y'all, now, and then maybe Mariela can make it a little bit more reader friendly
Yeah,
and send us
we'll
something.
play around with it. It's definitely something that I don't have a lot of experience with word clouds, but I'll play around with it and then we can send y'all a more comprehensive graphic.
You all.
Convergence. Yay!
Yay. Thank you. Have a great weekend of workshops, everybody. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this hour and a half. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Emily. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.